is brought to you live by Bahamas Maritime Connection.
What is maritime?
Maritime simply relates to navigation or commerce on the high seas.
Some say money makes the world go round. I say ships move the money that make the world move.
Who navigates those large international ships?
How often are international ships required to be surveyed and inspected?
Maritime also protects our seas and borders by way of our local Bahamas Defense Force.
It is very sad to say that out of 1,500 plus ships that are registered under the Bahamian flag, only a very small amount of Bahamians are employed.
Maritime Matters.
And pleasant good evening to you, our valued listening audience. Welcome one. Welcome all. Welcome to Maritime Matters. I am your host, Captain Glenn Bain. Our producer for the night, Mr. Sensational himself, Mr. Kishno Jones, is here with us. And we're going to have ourselves some fun. We're coming to you live via Love 97 FM. This is Tuesday, the 25th day of March, 2025. And if it's a Tuesday, it's Maritime Matters. We encourage that if you're driving and tuned in with us, please do so cautiously and ensure to take your time getting wherever it is you are trying to get safely. As the saying goes, drive to arrive alive. Our sponsors for tonight's show are 101 Pharmacy and also, of course, Island Care Pharmacy. Our second sponsors are Bahamas Maritime Connection Limited. And at BMC, we provide a full slate of ISPS maritime security services. Now let me just get off by saying, good night, Annie Mae. Up there in Freeport, my good old Annie Mae. You know how she goes. She's 92 years now and going strong, heading for 102. And that's how we rolling. Annie Mae, good night to you. Thanks for continuing to be the number one fan for Maritime Matters. And as you know, tonight we got a litany of stuff we got to talk about, as usual. We don't have a script, so we make it up as we go. So I'm relying and depending heavily on you people to call in. But the big topic, I'll tell you, we got a few. We got quite a few tonight. Big topic. $1 million fine or fee or charge for every call to any U.S. port by any Chinese built ship. And I call that one out first, because we could be on that for a while, eh? What impact does such a feat have on us here residing in the Bahamas? What impact such a feat would have on those residing in the Eastern Caribbean, Barbados, Trinidad, St. Lucia, Martinique, Guadeloupe, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts, all those far eastern, most of those are fed. And when I say fed, I'm talking about the feeding trail ships take to get to them is mainly from Puerto Rico, which is a U.S. port as well. Puerto Rico, they get most of the goods from. Some of them all the way from Miami, but for the most part, they come from Puerto Rico. And tropical shipping is the main line that services the entire Caribbean. Well, we got G&G shipping doing some stuff too. And then here in the Bahamas, we got a lot of our local Bahamian-owned ships that frequent Florida and brings in a barrage of containers. And those of you who have been on Porter's Key Dock western sections of late, you will see that we got some monsters out there. We're not quite as big as tropical shipping larger ships, But boy, we are huge, and we can carry a lot of load. And if we double the capacity we have there now, boy, anything can go down. All we need to do is double our capacity. And when we double that, make more frequent trips, like 2 or 3 trips a week each vessel. And we wouldn't have to worry about tropical shipping anymore. Now, I'm not sure what the situation is with Betty K and Crowley Shipping Lines, the other large entities that service Nassau with cargo. I'm not sure whether their ships were built in China, because you got to understand now, this mandate is not for tropical shipping. This mandate is not for Betty K. This mandate is not for Crowley. This mandate is not for Bahamian-owned vessels. This mandate, quite technically, is for any vessel or ship that was built in China, even if it's 30 or 40 years old. You built in China, you could pay $1 million every time you visit a U.S. port. And that's the crux of it. Well, of course, the number to call is 326-8255 if you want in and let's hear your views on this $1 million fee that President Trump has imposed on anybody bringing a ship there that was made in China. Any kind of ship. Well, of course, China has yet to make a cruise ship that operates on this side of the world. China made cruise ships now, but most of them already operate right in China area. They didn't make no ships for Carnival Shipping and Royal Caribbean Shipping Line, or Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines, or Royal Caribbean International, or Norwegian Cruise Line, NCL. But the next one, name or Disney Cruise Line. No. Most of those ships were made between Finland, Italy, I think 1 or 2 in France, and of course Germany. Those are the ports that made the recent big numbers, like 5 or 6 a year of cruise ships that are so magnificent and going all over the world. So the cruise lines don't have to worry about what President Trump said about visiting the U.S., coming into the U.S. port and paying $1 million, because they have no ships that were built in China, as far as I know. Now, if you know of any of those major cruise lines or any cruise line at all that have had their ships built in China, 326-8255. Please call and let me know, because I would love to know. But based on my knowledge of where cruise ships are being built and have been built for the past 30, 40 years, they're really the modern cruise ships. None of them were built in China. But got a lot of cargo ships. Now, why so many cargo ships were built in China? People ask, why? Well, first of all, no, let's stick with that for now. I gotta ask the next question right after that. Why so many cargo ships are built in China? Because it was so much cheaper, dummy. What are they got the book called Shipbuilding for Dummies? My boy will be man. I'm gonna call today, man. I even ain't call you and tell you a show on it. You know yourself to remind you. So damn busy these days. Shipbuilding for Dummies. China was selling the lowest cost steel. Now you know ships are built of steel. They lay the keel with steel. They do all the vertical bulkheads out of steel. They do all the decking out of steel. They do all the superstructure out of steel. So the ship is really built out of plates and plates of steel. And of course the beams and all them thicker steel. Because ships had to be built at or to a standard whereby if there's a fire on board that ship, whatever vertical zone that fire is in, now those zones are separated by what you call bulkheads. Those bulkheads are just steel from one end of the ship straight across to the next. and they have hatches in those those bulkheads. And the hatches are also, what we call doors, are also made of steel, even thicker than the bulkhead itself. So the fire can't pass through the door, and the fire can't pass through the steel. In most cases, if my memory of maritime serves me correct, excuse me, those bulkheads are required to have steel thick enough so that a fire out of control would not pass from one bulkhead to the next, wouldn't be able to pass through that steel bulkhead within an hour. So it'll take, after that fire get out of control, an hour for it to leave one vertical zone and enter another vertical zone. Now ships have, according to the length of course, and some of them are very, very long, but anywhere between big ships that really go worldwide, anywhere between 6 vertical zones and 10, 15 vertical zones, according to how long the ship is. Even cruise ships have them, right? And so the idea is that a fire will not burn or pass from one of those zones into another within an hour. And why? They want fire to take long to pass through those zones. Because if a ship catches fire, every single zone has the firefighting capacity with fire hydrants, fire hoses, fire suits, and all those things, so that you have an opportunity to put the fire out before it spreads to another zone. And if push come to shove, and all the crew on board that ship trying to put that fire out, and they can't get a fire out, and that fire get out of control. And normally the fire starts in places like the engine room or the galley, places that have machinery, right? Or grease, or that type of thing. So the whole idea is when you make that call, the fire is out of control. That means every buck and bullet, get out! Even if you have on a fire suit and you was fighting, get out! The fire out of control, you can't hold it no more. And when everybody get out of that space or that vertical zone where that fire is, you close it up. All the hatches you seal off, and you start something that is known as boundary cooling. What is boundary cooling? Boundary cooling means the bulkheads, the vertical zones, bulkheads on both sides, you just be on the zones next to them with a fire hose and water, just keeping it as cold as you could with that seawater all the time, just blasting. And in the military, in particular, we call that boundary cooling, right? So you boundary cooling the bulkhead to cause the fire to take even longer to pass through. And I was in Freeport last weekend, and they had fires springing out of all over the place, all kind of bushfire, especially in the eastern section along Queens Highway. And those fires, people were not so concerned about the bush catching fire, People were concerned about that fire spreading from the bush to their backyard and on their house. And I can tell you, neighbors got together and worked together as a team. And, I got a little bit of experience firefighting because I'm a maritime man and I'm a military man. So I would hop in the bush and try to strike them fires from the base, go to the side, make sure the smoke don't come in my face. So I know how to attack fire. And then of course I was helping out, and everybody started to catch on, and we were able to kind of stave the fire off enough so that it don't reach people's fences to get to their yard, to crawl across, and it was running across the grass. I can tell you, everybody's wetting up there. So we were doing our boundary cooling per se by wetting up the fence, wetting up the area around the fence, and wetting up your yard, your grass, so that even if it reached the fence, the grass wet, it'll be very difficult for it to come across the grass and burn and come to your buildings. And so boundary cooling is very important. So I am getting all of this in, not only because we just had all those fires in Freeport, and that's a very important topic, because that ain't really maritime, right? But these ships have to have so much steel, because, and I talking about thick steel, because that's what the whole ship is built from. Before they start putting all them wooden and plastic coating, or below all of them is a big thick steel. Even when you're on a cruise ship, those things you buck up to where you were, they are surrounding the steel and hiding the steel, but that big thick steel is in there. And so when the fire is in one vertical zone, you boundary cool it so it don't pass into the next one. And you know how they put that fire out on ships? It's so amazing how if a ship has a fire out of control in a vertical zone, and that vertical zone have an hour before it spread to another vertical zone, at the very bottom of the hull, the keel, not the keel, the hull itself, where it sits on the water, at the very bottom, they have what they call emergency valves. Now, I happen to notice because I used to inspect those big ships, cargo ships, container ships, cruise ships, tankers. I used to inspect them. So all of them must have emergency valves. At the bottom of every zone has at least two. And the purpose of those emergency valves, and these days you don't have to go there and open those emergency valves with a tool. You basically go in the machinery control room or ECR, engineering control room, and you just press a button. And the valve for any particular valve you want open, electronically opens. And when that valve opens, because that is on the very bottom of the ship, all the seawater starts to rush in. So what we would do, or what ships are required to do as a firefighting measure, is once they call that fire out of control and they close and seal up that space, they would hope that because the fire isn't getting no more oxygen. See, if you don't have no more oxygen, the fire will out, die a natural death. Because fire need oxygen, it need heat, and it need fuel in order to burn. It need three things. It's a triangle of three. One of those things from the triangle missing, you ain't have no fire. But we don't have the heat, and we don't have the fuel, because whatever in there, it burning and using that for fuel. When you see fire burning bush, you notice the fuel, the trees themselves. So fire must have fuel to burn. And fuel no mean gas or diesel or oil. Fuel means anything that the fire combustible enough for the fire to feed off to burn. Once the fire could burn it and release carbon, that fire can live. And we've seen many cases in those bushfires where you put the fire out and 10 minutes later you're coming back to the same area and the fire relit. So water alone is not enough, because if that fire still have a little bit of fuel and the heat is still there, that's two parts of the triangle. All it needs now is heat. Heat, fuel, what else we say? I don't forget. Anyway, you need those three, and the fire could relight itself, eh? So fires were springing back up after you throw the water on it and it stopped, and in a little while it come right back up, because underneath the trash they had some rocks, and then they had more leaf and that type of thing. So that's why the fire keeps springing back up. But when you open those emergency valves on those ships, and that seawater, which is cold, no matter where you are, the seawater never warm. So they give no, but that entire compartment becomes flooded with water. So no matter what kind of fire it is, it can't survive if you flood it with seawater, eh? And that's how many ships survive out of control fire, because with it ain't gonna take 10 minutes for that area to be flooded, because once those valves open, man, that water's coming in fast. So the space becomes inflamed with fire. You do your crew attacks on the fire to try and out it. Once that fails, you seal off that compartment, and then you go. Well, you give it some time to see if it can die down, because it loses oxygen. But if that continue, and you know whether it's dying down or not by just touching the bulkhead with the back of your hand. Well, sometimes the front of your hand, because sometimes if it really hurts, you can really get burned. So you just continue and you monitor those bulkheads to tell what's going on in that space. You can't open it, because once you open it, you introduce a new new oxygen. And then that whole area can have what you call a flashover. Because it get fresh oxygen, everything that's puff again. So you don't want that. Don't open nothing. Just feel. But if you're still uncertain, then of course you go for the big dog. You go for the emergency valves. Flood that compartment, and you know that water out. Because you could flood a particular compartment on a ship, and the ship still wouldn't sink. Because the other compartments are buoyant. The other vertical zones are buoyant. Only one full. So that ship will never sink like that. And then, of course, once you get that fire out, you have bilge pumps in all those zones as well, where you could just, when you're ready and you're sure that is out, you pump the water back overboard, and your space may be all damaged because you have water thrown through it and all the rest of that, but your ship is not on fire. That's how ships are designed. No matter where they are in the world, to put the fire out in any particular zone. And of course they have other additional things like they'll have some ships, especially cruise ships, would have a drench system. Either carbon dioxide they load in that zone, or they used to use halon, but they outlaw halon because it used to mess up the ionosphere or the ozone layer, whichever it used to mess up. It used to mess up something up there, right? So they outlaw halon, so everybody basically uses carbon dioxide now. And what does carbon dioxide do? Carbon dioxide overpowers the oxygen, because fire do not need carbon dioxide to burn. It needs oxygen. And if you flood it with carbon dioxide, it suffocates the oxygen to the extent that the fire just dies a natural death because it don't have enough oxygen. It starves to death from oxygen. And so, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. The reason why China would have had so many ships built in China, because the steel in China was cheap. The labor in China was cheap. And so when you could build a ship in China to build that same ship somewhere else, you pay almost 1.5 times the price. So if that ship costs $8 million to build in China, you're looking at what, 12, 14 million dollars to build that ship anywhere else in the world. Now the US was far more expensive than most places because the labor in the US and the taxes in the US used to hike up the cost. So nobody's building those ships in the US. Why you gonna build a ship in the US which will cost you twice as much as if you build a ship in China? And when you get a mortgage on your ship, the fellow who built a ship the same size competing with you, his mortgage is half the price of yours. So he can offer better rates than you. You ain't gonna make no money. You're in trouble. So the whole idea is people rush to China to build their ships because it was so much cheaper. Now here comes 2025. And President Donald Trump in January took the helm. And President Trump decided we're going to have a war with China when it comes to trade. We'll have a trade war. We ain't no fighting nobody because ain't nobody can beat us. Ain't nobody fool enough to want to fight us. So we can have a war on trade. China making too much money. China's doing too well. They look like they're trying to catch us up. And I have some issues with that. We're going to make America great again. So we can start by making sure China ain't making all this money they used to make. So, in order to cause ship owners to think twice about building their ship in China, President Trump sent out a mandate. We call it, he signed a declaration or whatever the president signed, and sent that out stating that I think it's supposed to start this Monday. Well, I don't know if it started yet. But it's stating that any ship that is built in China coming to the U.S. will pay $1 million each time they come into our waters or our ports. Now, just think about that for a minute. You got a ship coming into the U.S. to do trade that is not built in China and do not have to pay that $1 million every time they go in. And then you have one that is not built, that is built in China, and every time they come in, they get paid $1 million. So let's talk about one we know about. Excuse me. We know about tropical shipping. All of us know what tropical shipping is responsible for almost half the cargo that comes into Nassau. I dare say Freeport as well, right? I'm talking about domestic cargo, not the international stuff that goes to Freeport Container Port. I'm talking about in Freeport Harbor, where outside of the container port, where all those smaller container ships come to bring cargo. Carnival has the lion's share. Carnival has the Carnival is not a cargo ship; it's a cruise ship. Tropical shipping, and they has the lion's share. And we know that at least about 80% of the cargo coming into the Bahamas lands in Nassau. And Carnival got the lion's share. So if Carnival decided 20 years ago or 30 years ago, because I want you to know these companies plan well in advance, that they're going to have 10 ships built, and they have a contract with a shipyard or one of those places that build ships in China to build 10 ships at a cost of so and so per ship. And those 10 ships were built, and now Tropical operating on tropical owned ships, but all built in China. But now the ship operates out of West Palm Beach, because that's where tropical shipping hub is, eh? And it's operating out of West Palm Beach on a weekly basis. Sometimes I remember one Carnival ship used to come to Nassau 3 times a week. Tropical ship. Why I keep saying Carnival? When I say Carnival, you know I mean tropical, right? So 3 times a week, I think the Tropic Tide or Tropic Jade or whatever it was. This when tropical was downtown Bay Street before everybody had to move to Arawak Port Development, eh? And I know, because I used to wait around these areas, right? And Carnival still comes into Nassau. Tropical, still comes into Nassau at least 2 to 3 times a week. It may not be the same ship, but they're operating plenty cargo. And so if every time one of those ships come to Nassau, they have to pay an additional $1 million because they got to go back to Florida, eh? Could you imagine what that will do to their bottom line? They will have to close shop or pass it on to us. And that's why people are saying inflation is going to balloon. Because that $1 million a trip will cause those ships to have, that company to have to pay millions of dollars a week. Because I think 70%, 80%, most of their ships operate out of West Palm Beach. Like I say, you get 1 or 2, you get some that operate out of Puerto Rico to carry freight and cargo and whatnot to the Eastern Caribbean. And they get a big one, but it's going from Miami to Puerto Rico to get them their voice. Then they go from Puerto Rico to the Eastern Caribbean, right? But you got a lot of ships that operate right in this region, between Bahamas and Jamaica and Cayman Island and Central American ports and that type of thing. Carnival got the whole area wrap up. They're the #1 cargo distributors in the Caribbean out of the U.S. Well, all is basically come out of the U.S. So they're the #1. So if the #1 cargo distributors, cargo by ships, distributors, have to hike up their costs by almost double amount, or I don't know, maybe triple amount, just to continue that service, then that's going to cost us a whole heap load more money for freight. But, and I dare say, but, tropical shipping is not the only place in the business. And as paradigm shift, because of course, this mandate by President Trump is going to shift the paradigm. It's going to cause any ship operating out of the U.S. or coming in the U.S. on a regular basis a lot more money than they normally would have operated, like 2 or 3 times. But they wouldn't be able to make a profit unless they go way up on the rates, eh? But what about Betty K? And I'm talking for Nassau now. I'm talking for the Bahamas wide. Betty K comes in like 2-3 times a week. But I don't think, I could be dead wrong. And if somebody that knows, please call in and let me know. I don't think Betty K ships are built in China also. I don't think. But they might. But let's say they don't. Because certainly, most of the Bahamian ships that go to the U.S. for freight, some go once a month, some go once every 2 weeks, some go weekly. And I don't want to go naming who they are, because I mean, if we be in shipping, we know. You got, I think, the mailboat companies, number one, when it comes to all the Bahamian companies that going in and out of the States often. And they may not be number one, right? Because we got Dane shipping as well, that goes into the state quite often. We got Bahamas ferries that got 1 or 2 ships that goes in and out of the States, I guess, twice a month or whatever the case may be. We got, I think, Captain Edens Taylor may have a boat. Certainly, Tom Hanna has a couple of boats that go in and out of the States all the time. So we have a good grouping of Bahamian-owned vessels that does what tropical shipping does, but not on the same scale. But can we, the Bahamians, increase the amount of ships we have? Let's say we double the amount. And we double the amount of times these ships go in and outside. The only reason they don't go every week is because they don't have a demand for cargo to do it every week. Because some of these ships could stack containers like tropical stack containers. Because you got all the cranes at APD to take them off. So you could go low-low. Low-low means you load on, load off. Roll-roll means you roll it on the chassis and roll it off. Now when you roll it on the chassis, and I give you a little maritime heads up here, right? If you see those ships that the truck is rolling the container on a chassis. In other words, they're on this trailer. That's what we call a chassis, right? And you know those truck handlers can handle themselves. And they're rolling that on the ship. Once they put that on the ship, no container could go on top of that. Because the chassis is designed to carry the load of only one container. Right? Plus how you can get it on top of that. Because that's already high. You done it, you got no crane. That's the reason why you're rolling it on and off. But they got, instead of using the chassis, let's say that same ship that does roll on, roll off, decides, well, look here, I could stack these containers on this deck and carry 3 instead of 1 on that one spot. So you ain't rolling it on no more. You put it flat on the deck, and then you put 2 on top of that. That means you could now bring 3 times the amount of containers on one trip. So a tiny conversion for those Bahamian-owned vessels to forget Ro-Ro, because now they get in the States twice a week to fill the demand that tropical, because tropical can't do it no more. if you see they don't win this battle, to say that since we based in the U.S. and we've been doing this all these years, our ships are built in China, please give us a break. That's what they're trying to do. They now trying to get a waiver to say that we are based here for many years. We are part of West Palm Beach. We don't operate out of no other country and come into the U.S. We operate from the U.S. going into other countries, which is a very good argument in my opinion, because that's exactly what they do. Why should you have a company that is based in your country taking things out to other countries, be taxed $1 million a time when they come back? And that don't even sound like that makes sense. Well, it ain't make sense for no ship to be paying $1 million only because they built in China. Because these ships are not owned by China. You realize the ship owner, although he paid to build a ship in China, and then he had to pay a humongous amount of money to get that transported from China, even if they run on their own steam, to the Bahamas or to Florida or to wherever they are in this region. They had to pay a humongous amount of money just for that, what they call it, they got a technical name for it, transit voyage, I think transit voyage, to get it from where it was built to where it could be operating. Excuse me. Okay, drink some water. Oh, my apologies. So, although it's cheap to build it in China, that repositioning voyage or transit voyage is not a cheap venture, it's a costly venture, right? But you still save a lot more money than if you build it on this side of the world. So we got a company like Tropical Shipping, and I pick it on them because they're the ones that are affecting us right now. I believe that the only company we're talking about, and I could be wrong, but I believe that the only company we're talking about that's going to impact our freight and cause it to be inflated so high is Tropical Shipping. Because I don't think Betty K has that problem. And I know for sure most of the Bahamian-owned vessels are built in the region. And I know, most of them are built in the region. Most of them are built in Louisiana. And then we had some, I think, in Honduras built of late. But most of the Bahamian-owned freight ships that go between here and Florida are built or refitted or renovated right in this region of the world. None of them, I think, were built in China. Because they're so small, compared to these big ships. Not that China don't build small ships too, but, China, the ones with really built in China that operate between here and Florida are the bigger ones. So, the question would be, if Tropical Shipping is not successful in their bid to be waived at $1 million a time, could the existing Bahamian ships triple their capacity by doing low instead of row, and at the same time do more voyages? So instead of going once a week, go twice a week. Instead of going once a month, go 8-10 times a month. Could they fill that void that Tropical Shipping had? Because now you're talking about the big fellas. See, Tropical Shipping deals with everybody, But they had the larger contracts. Because they were so well established in Florida. You could have hundreds of containers go to Tropical Shipping facilities in West Palm Beach, and they would be able to accommodate it because they're almost biggest. The container port in Freeport, they ain't biggest the container port, but they used to stack their containers, and wherever it going, they bring it to that ship. Whenever there's a very, very organized and busy terminal, I can tell you, I've been in there many times. And so, because of that setup, the ease of doing business for big companies like Super Value. I think they probably the biggest, right? And then you got the warehouses like FYP and JBR and Tops and you know, City Lumber Yard and Kelly's, and all them uses for the most part tropical shipping, because tropical shipping provided the volume they need. They just don't like Bahamian owned vessels. Tropical shipping would provide the volume and the consistency. And I, you know, I don't blame them. If I was in their shoe, I might use tropical shipping too. As a matter of fact, one time I used to import, I was using tropical shipping. So I'm not saying tropical shipping shouldn't be used. But now, tropical shipping went ahead and got their ships built in China. Nobody could have foreseen. I don't care who you is or who you are. You would not have foreseen 20 years ago when tropical shipping was building their ships that if they build a ship in China, the US would impose a $1 million per trip levy on them. This was unforeseeable. This was unthinkable back in those days. I mean, even today, this is unthinkable. And a lot of people still trying to figure out, what the hell is this? How could a president of a country put such demands on another country, and not only on that country, on the ship owners that are the ship built? These ship owners, they have no relationship with China, you know. You think tropical shipping have a relationship with the Chinese government? No, sir. They were just getting the big bang for their buck. They were going to the best place in the world where they could have a series of ships built for the most, not convenient, what were they looking for? Man, some of y'all call in and give me my word, please. Boy, y'all know me bad. The most reasonable, and reasonable wasn't the word they're looking for, but I could use that. The most reasonable shipyard to build their series of ships, because they know they were going to build about 10 ships. They were going to phase out all their ships because they have a viable, busy business that is going to go on for decades and has been going on for decades. But now, when this ratchet got thrown in the wheel, even us still have our mouth wide open, eh? Trying to figure out how did that really happen? And some of us don't understand the magnitude of what really happened. We just hear a little something, hear a little. We don't understand that if we don't have alternatives to tropical shipping, what we pay today for freight is going to triple. But thank goodness we have alternatives, eh? Now, I don't want you for 1 second to think that it's just a transition, a smooth transition of saying, okay, we wouldn't use tropical no more, we can use our. No, sir. It don't happen like that. Because if you have decades of relationships of suppliers sending things to tropical shipping, and now you want those suppliers from all over the world to now start sending things to a different location. That different location gotta now make room for loading more ships. Because, like I say, to replace what is done in West Palm Beach at tropical, whether you go to Miami, Port Everglades, West Palm Beach, Port Canaveral, wherever you want to do this, it's going to be a big deal. It's a big, large volume. Because we're not only talking about the Bahamas. Remember now, if tropical shipping don't win this plea, I'll call it a plea to say, well, you know, see us a little differently so we don't have to pay that. Like the people who are outside of the U.S., if they don't win that plea, they basically gotta stick a pin, press the pause button, or press the stop button. Because they will not be able to operate and be competitive with paying $1 million every time their ship return to the U.S. It's impossible. Impossible. So, quite technically, tropical shipping may have to pause for 4 years in hopes that when this time is up and President Trump has to move on, whoever takes the reign of president will reverse that decision or reduce it significantly enough for tropical shipping to re-engage its operation and make a profit without going too high on the competition. Because now, remember now, if they're out of the business for 3-4 years, these other entities will become well established in doing what they do and may not even want to return to tropical shipping. So, I don't know why I take all day talking to this. One thing, done after 6? You mean we got but half hour left? You see how bad this is? And not one of y'all want to call and say nothing about how this thing is going to impact us in the Bahamas. And yeah, people talk about it all day on other talk shows, in the newspapers and all the rest of that. Nobody has nothing to say about it. Nobody wants to ask any question about it. Do we really care? Are we concerned? What about those big companies that are going to benefit from this if Tropical's plea fails? We got a lot of Bahamian companies that will start making 3 and 4 times the profit they make now. None of y'all listening? Want me to call your name? None of y'all could call and say, boy, this thing looks interesting and we don't know what can happen, but yes, this is true, or no, it ain't go like that. What's going on? Nobody move, nobody get hurt. I got to plea and beg for somebody to call in and make a statement on this situation. Well, you know I don't beg much. So, in that case, we will move to our break, our only break. We can have no more break after this. We move to our only break. When we come back, we can pick up on a different topic. Since you only want to talk about this one, you all must be tired of me talking. You're listening to Maritime Matters. On this show, we talk maritime. I am your host, Captain Glenn Payne, and our lovely producer for the night, Mr. Kishno Jones, the man on the pulse. And we got half hour left, people. So we're going to rush to our break, and we shall be back. Thank you very much.
At Bahamas Maritime Connection Limited, we offer first-class maritime security services throughout the Bahamas and the wider Caribbean. As experts in maritime security, we specialize in production of ISPS assessments and plans, verification audits, certified familiarization training, and port security consultancy, just to name a few. Our services also include provision of a security force to maintain all required ISPS facility security compliance. For all your maritime security needs, visit us today in Nassau at our East Street South location or in Freeport in the Kipling Building. Call us at 392-3515 or follow us on all social media platforms. Bahamas Maritime Connection, your leader in maritime security. Let's help you make the connection. At One-on-One Pharmacy, our friendly staff is ready to serve you. Visit us today for all your prescription and over-the-counter needs at our East Street South or Charles Saunders Highway locations. We're open Monday through Saturday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and from 9 to 4 on Sundays. In a rush? Send your refill scripts online at oneononepharmacy.com or ask about our convenient pickup service. One-on-One Pharmacy, providing personal health care with people at heart.
Love 97 FM. Often imitated, never duplicated.
Sitting in the morning sun, I'll be sitting when the evening comes, watching the ships roll in. Then I'll watch them roll away again. Yeah. I'm sitting on the dock of the bay, watching the tide roll away. Just sitting on the dock of the bay, wasting time. I left my home in Georgia, headed for the Frisco Bay. I've had nothing to live for, look like nothing's gonna come my way. So I'm just gonna sit on the dock of the bay.
My work is on the water, free diving, throw out line is how I survive. Oh! I thank God for the sea, I thank God for the land. I thank you for making me a Bahamian fisherman. I thank you for the breath to help me dive that depth, and for giving me the smoke to dive before it doesn't come. The only thing I worry about, them poachers from the south that does but hell in me. How they come and raid our sea, defense force hurry come and make them poachers run. Them people don't mean no good, and that's enough a livelihood.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Maritime Matters. I am your host, Captain Glenn Bain, and our producer for the night, Mr. Kishno Jones. You know what he do? He just put the boatman seaman thing right on time. I mean, this man just fast like that. I'm a boatman, wee, a seaman, wee. My work is on the water, free diving, thrown out lining. That's how I survive. Go KB. Boy, KB hard. I might as well tell you. Anybody where you know KB hard, they know KB. That boy good. Alright. Ladies and gentlemen, well, you know, tonight we just ran out a whole litany on what is our situation with this mandate that President Trump made to cause any ship that was built in China, and we know China built more than 50% of the ships over the past 20 years. So it's a big blow, you know. This what you call playing dirty, eh? Because Mr. Trump didn't only put that fee on the ships that were built in China. He also put a 25% duty on any goods coming into the U.S. from China. Or is it any goods made in China? I even ain't sure. But we know this trade war going on where he put this 25% duty on any Chinese products or any products coming from China. I ain't sure how it go, but I know it's one of them, right? And no matter which one it is or if it's both, it's a devastating effect or impact on many businessmen who basically set up shop with China. You see, China had cheap labor for decades. Cheap labor, cheaper than anywhere else. China have the largest shipping ports in the world because they do more trade than everybody else. So those ports are humongous. So what Mr. Trump mandate is to put 25% duty on any of those Chinese goods. You know what that mean now? That mean anything you was buying that was coming from China can be 25% higher for the freight. Well, not the freight, but the duty. And so that's going to price most Chinese products, if not out the market, but on even keel with other products. And you know, we already have this little funny thing about Chinese products. We really only used to get them because they was cheaper, eh? But now they mightn't be cheaper no more. So that's going to have a devastating impact on the Chinese exports. Not only to the U.S., but to, you know, a lot of countries affiliated with the U.S. But anyway, that war don't have nothing to do with us. Well, it have impact on us, like it have impact on all the rest of the world. But let's talk about something else. What really have severe impact, and I didn't say negative, but severe impact on us here in the Bahamas, particularly those of us in New Providence. You know, lately they talking a lot about BPL converting from using, well, I think I think they still use bunker C. Although those machinery may have been replaced by diesel. So, if my assumption is right, BPL now uses, for the most part, diesel to generate electricity for this entire island. And they're now looking into changing from diesel to LNG, or liquefied natural gas. Excuse me. And it's really natural gas, not liquefied, it's vaporized natural gas. Right? Because what is intended, and you know, if we're keeping up with this, we'll know that the government have already engaged or signed off with Shell International to supply the liquefied natural gas, to bring it into the Bahamas. And then another company is going to convert it, because you can't use liquefied natural gas from the ship straight to the machinery. They don't operate like diesel, where you take it from the ship straight to the machine. No, that got to be converted to vapor phase. Right? And that conversion, the processing machines and whatnot, to convert from liquefied natural gas to just natural gas, so that now you could feed that through the pipelines. That package, that platform, according to what's in our dailies, is going to cost somewhere in the range of $200 million. So you're going to have $200 million being invested in a conversion processing machinery plant, that when the ship brings the LNG, and I think they're bringing it from Canada, or they may bring it from somewhere else, but it's going to be a large ship bringing the LNG. And then they say they already have a small, I think that small one is be going between somewhere in Texas or Louisiana and Clifton Pier. They got a small one doing that now, eh? So it's being said that I think by November this year, the process will start, where the machinery will start to use the LNG, the natural gas, and our light bill will be reduced by a significant amount. Not all the way down to half yet, because they got like 3 or 4 phases to this thing, right? But after the 4th phase, which will be by the end of next year, we should be experiencing light bills less than half of what we experience in the day. And how good will that be? That will be super good, because everybody wins. And I want you to know BPL be winning big time too. Because when they bill us for half of what we paying today, they can be saving money and making bigger profits, eh? And of course, we got the special interest groups who's going to be providing the machinery or getting this $200 million to put in this processing plant, so that the country could now be operating, getting power from natural gas. Now, it's not going to be like in the States where they're running pipelines to our house for us to have natural gas for the space heaters and stuff, because we ain't need no space heater. We don't get that cold. Right? We're not going to have stoves operating off natural gas instead of LPG, petroleum gas. We're just going to have the machinery at Clifton Pier generating the power that the island needs by the use of natural gas. And they already have all the transmission lines to send that uptown. And so you ain't nothing to change with us, you know. All we could be doing is getting that same energy we getting today for cheaper costs. So we can't lose. We can't lose. But you know I gotta have a big but in there, right? I remember when we were small. you wanna make my sister Catherine cry? All you have to say, but you used to call her butt forehead. She's an old woman now, so she ain't gonna cry no more. Butt forehead. Boy, she boys don't cry. She had a big forehead, right? But she looks so good now, she ain't got her forehead. I look flat now. And Catherine, boy, if she hear me, she could do me in. Anyway, but what about solar? You see, the narrative is being pushed in this country today that LNG is the way to go. And I know better. And plenty of people who know better. And those people who put in the LNG know better. And I can guarantee you that the government knows better. So the question is, why? We're going to invest $200 million into a plant that in 2050 can no longer operate. I'm telling you, in 25 years, that will have to shut down. So you're going to invest $200 million in a plant and introduce natural gas, which is a fossil fuel. Mind you, it's like half the amount of emission of carbon than the other diesel and them that do. But solar don't produce no emission. If you bring in solar now, you don't need $200 million to set it up. Because you could use most of our rooftops. And put in the solar panels on our rooftops. You ain't got to go find no solar farm. You put it on our roof. We give you permission to put it on our roof and tie us into the grid. And for $100 million, you could have this whole island tied to the grid, and you don't need, you get enough power to run this country, this island, this New Providence. $100 million. You know how much solar panels that could buy? You know how much energy the sun will create for us if you put $100 million in solar panels? We even ain't need no batteries. Because if you tie it into the grid, our excess goes into the grid. And when night comes, we take it back from the grid. Now, if you want to get fancy and get batteries too, allow some of us, and I can tell you I solarizing anything I own in a little while. I don't start. So, I am not preaching what I don't know. 326-8255. Anybody disagree with me, please call and tell me your disagreement. Tell me that solar is not the best way for us right now. Tell me that solar is not going to save hundreds of millions of dollars compared to LNG. I want somebody call and tell me that. And tell me how they conclude that. Because I know better. And while I may be a maritime man, I'm also an electrician. So I understand power. I have done research on top of research about solar. I know about it, LNG. Now I remember a couple of years back, about 10, 15 years ago, they wanted to put one of these same LNG plant on Ocean Key. The company, the name AES, right? AES bought Ocean Key from Marcona Industries, which operated, Marcona did for about 30 or 40 years. Marcona did, aragonite. And they had the big bulk carrier come in and like twice a month and take the aragonite out. And after AES made an offer to buy the key, Marcona was too happy to get, I think they was going to get out of the business anyhow, right? And you hear these people talking so much money, but talking so much foolishness, but, there's so much money in this aragonite, and the country could be making, come on, stop talking nonsense. Because if that was the case, you think the people who was mining aragonite for 30 years was close down shop and sell out? The company would even eat dirty aragonite? So anyway, BPL, correction, let me leave BPL for a little while, right? Because they know they're doing foolishness. AES bought Ocean Key, and they were supposed to install a processing plant just like this one they talked about $200 million for, where the big ship would bring the LNG, it would be processed on the key to vaporize or to vapor or to natural gas, because what it does is it basically freezes the liquid until it turns into vapor. And then they would have a pipeline running from Ocean Key straight across to Miami. And the deal fall flat because I think the government changed in the U.S. and the new president, they figured they ain't going down that road no more, they can scrap that, or something going wrong. So AES didn't really need, so what they did is after 2 years, they sold the key. But this LNG, and they also discussed, I remember back then, the reason why I know so much about AES is because they chose my security company, Bahamas Maritime Connection, who sponsors the show. They chose BMC to do the security because they wanted to maintain the ISPS, International Shipping Port status or certification, because they know that their big ships is going to have to come there to bring the liquefied natural gas that the plant had to process and turn into natural gas, vaporize it, and send it through the pipeline. So this ain't nothing new to the Bahamas. Well, it's new if they do it, but this idea is new. As a matter of fact, they want to also run a pipeline, a smaller pipeline, from all the way in Bimini to Nassau, so that 15 years ago, well, maybe not that long, 10 to 15 years ago, AES was saying to our government, at Clifton Pier, you can use machinery that takes natural gas and it will reduce the electricity bill by a half. Way back then. So that's something the government could have done long time. But when the world is weaning itself away from fossil fuel, the Bahamas wants to go from fossil fuel to fossil fuel. And the Bahamas happen to be in the solar belt. How much countries get more heat than us year round? There are some right on the equator and whatnot. But we are rich and ripe in solar. The sun loves us. And if we were to install solar today, or let's say by next year end, instead of LNG, the Bahamas government will receive carbon credits in a handsome amount. But you think we can receive carbon credits if we go to LNG? Mind you, we will receive some because we reduce from diesel to natural gas, but that's only half of what we will receive if we reduce from diesel to solar. So the country will be making money. We ain't got to worry about no more light current cutting off if we go solar. But there's a problem with that machinery, with the natural gas, current will go off again. Oh, it's overload. The machinery ain't big enough to take the whole island. We gonna have to do load shedding. We ain't want to hear that no more. And you can afford to tell me you ain't gonna hear that no how. Because my thing is, let's do solar right now and get away with the problem altogether. 326-825. None of y'all want to call. None of y'all want to say nothing. Well, I could be that right that nobody. I mean, call me and tell me I'm right, then go on and say something, man. Y'all ain't gonna get like that. Yes, it gives me great. It's laughable to see that our country, the Bahamas, right in the middle of solar, the solar belt, the solar region, we are one of the best places for solar. And our government, at a time like this when the world is weaning away from the fossil fuel that is putting all that carbon in the air, are not going to cut out carbon and take this opportunity to bring in solar for cheaper than it can cost to bring in LNG. And our power bill will be even less than what LNG will produce. Why are they not talking about that? Why are we talking about LNG like this the best thing we could have? Why are we not talking about solar like that's the best thing we could have? Because, well, I don't know. I don't like to say it, right? But we know why. I ain't got to say nothing. They ain't going to say Glenn Bean say so. Because I ain't going to say it. But we know why. Oh, we got a call on the line? Boy, look here. I'm glad you saved me from saying what else I was going to say. Caller, you on Maritime Matters. Hello.
Good afternoon, Mr. B, Captain B.
Good afternoon to you, sir.
I'm happy to be a part of your show. See, the problem with people like me and you, we don't hold back. See? You just run hot, and I just run hot. And we have good reason for running hot because we have common sense.
Well, I'm glad you called to calm me down a little bit.
So I might make it even worse here, but anyhow, I will proceed. What I don't understand, like you are alluding, our Prime Minister is out there leading the way or being out in front with respect to climate change and speaking about the effects of the carbon in the atmosphere. But yet, he's just bull skating around with the same natural gas, which is all in the same and very much the same.
Yeah,
so it's utter stupidity for me.
Yeah, it's so hypocritical.
Him prance around the world, making himself appearing to be doing something sensible. When in actuality, he's ready to run off now. It's just abject stupidity again. It's just stupidity.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Because on one hand, he's saying, oh, you know, we need to, the Bahamas is absorbing all this carbon out there with our seagrass meadows. We need to get something for it. Plus, the world needs to move off from this fossil fuel because it's messing us up, and the big countries now need to pay. And you know what it's like? It's like the fella from Guyana, the Prime Minister of Guyana. I heard him on hard copy. Not hard copy. That's Steve McKinney. Hard talk, something like that, on BBC. Mm-hmm. And the question was put to him. Okay, so your country found all this oil, billions of tons of oil, and you were saying the Caribbean is being affected by all this fossil fuel from the big countries. How are you now going to mine oil? And you know what he tell them? He said, well, let me give you a lesson on climate change, my brother. We got a large tropical forest, right, that absorbs so much carbon out there, and the United Nations ain't getting us nothing for it. So the whole Caribbean ain't getting nothing for taking all this fossil fuel carbon out the air that your big country is putting in place. So why can't I make some money like your say the countries in the Middle East and America, they still digging and dredging for oil. So why can't I get some money in the process at the same time, because y'all say I should worry about the climate change and y'all ain't stopping.
Yeah. See, and so, all right. I see. I'm a little confused here. Maybe you might have a better understanding on it. But this pipe deal that they are speaking about with BPL, last week it was on the news and they made mention of Pike making, but they in the story that was presented, speaking about this deal that BPL is establishing with Pike. Pike is solar was mentioned in that in the communication to the public. So I'm trying to figure out if we have this deal that is going on with Pike that involves solar, and because I read in the newspaper where the current Minister of Energy was condemning and speaking negatively about all of the impact that the fossil fuel has created for the country with expenses for burning that to create energy to provide electricity. And so I was a little confused when I heard that story. Then I heard this story with LNG, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here?
How could we move away from solar and go to LNG? And we try to show the world this is the way we should be going.
See, and so that is what makes our Prime Minister look so stupid.
Well,
I know people that are Arsenal, and he sounds to intelligent people when he prances around talking nonsense about climate change.
Yeah, because it's very hypocritical.
Anything in his country to work towards or advance in the area that he's preaching about.
Not only that, it's going to save the citizens of the country so much money if they go solar.
See that there is the other challenge. How see, they talk about this LNG, how it's going to save, but if we really wanted, or if he wanted to save the citizens' money, then we should go to solar now.
That's right.
Why go to LNG when you know you're going to abandon that process?
Yeah.
But you see, these are the kind of stupid people that not me. Bahamians elected to Parliament.
Yeah, but what is the other opposition parties, the coalition, and what are they saying?
All of them are just alike.
Why are they so quiet?
Yeah, all of them are just alike.
Yeah, but that's foolishness. So that means we like a duck.
Yeah, literally. The country that benefits so much from solar, but yet these morons are here talking about LNG and how we can save money. And see, I've been around for years, Captain Bain.
Yeah, but you know,
I've heard this story every year about load shedding and the rest of that, and how we can save money. And the next thing you know, you spending all kind of money buying all kind of equipment, and people are still punishing and suffering from high electricity bills.
Yep.
And so why bring in LNG, like you said, now, and in 25 years you must get rid of it?
You must.
You can bring in solar now and not be concerned about that for the future.
Exactly.
See, this is the kind of I will use one word from I can't use one.
Please don't use that one.
Thanks for accepting my call.
Well, I thank you for calling, my brother. You had the last say. Thank you very much. That closes our show. Very good call, ladies and gentlemen. That brings our show to conclusion. We gone over 1, 2, or 3. My boy tell I get the best producer in the world. Even he stop me. You have been listening to Maritime Matters, where we talk maritime. Our sponsors for the night were Bahamas Maritime Connection and also 101 Pharmacy and Island Care Pharmacy. Thank you so much for always listening to our show. Our producer was none other than the great Mr. Kishno Jones. And ladies and gentlemen, well, with that, as always, I say good night to Annie Mae and Maritime Matters. Out.
Sitting on the dock of the bay, wasting time. I left my home in Georgia, headed for the Frisco Bay. I've had nothing to live for, look like nothing's gonna come my way. So I'm just gonna sit on the dock of the bay, watching the tide roll away.
Pharmacy, our friendly staff is ready to serve you. Visit us today for all your prescription and over-the-counter needs at our East Street South or Charles Saunders Highway locations. We're open Monday through Saturday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and from 9 to 4 on Sundays. In a rush? Send your refill scripts online at oneononepharmacy.com or ask about our convenient pickup service. One-on-One Pharmacy, providing personal health care with people at heart. At Bahamas Maritime Connection Limited, we offer first-class maritime security services throughout the Bahamas and the wider Caribbean. As experts in maritime security, we specialize in production of ISPS assessments and plans, verification audits, certified familiarization training, and port security consultancy, just to name a few. Our services also include provision of a security force to maintain all required ISPS facility security compliance. For all your maritime security needs, visit us today in Nassau at our East Street South location or in Freeport in the Kipling Building. Call us at 392-3515 or follow us on all social media platforms. Bahamas Maritime Connection, your leader in maritime security. Let's help you make the connection.
One people, one music, your station. Love 97.